By Joe, I think we're ready to go.
Tony Caravan. You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
Yeah, it's time to go to the show. This is going to be a brutally honest program that most people, the average person, would not share with you, but I'm going to share it after I take a sip of my coffee. Nice and hot, Kona blend, a little bit of 100% Colombian in there. Yeah. That turned out okay. All right, this is going to be a continuation of some stuff that happened. As you can see, I'm dressed a little bit heavier. Usually I've got the Hawaiian shirts or shorts, you know. But the thing about it is, it's cold. In fact, it's 5:10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. It's the 23rd of September in the calendar year 2021 in the former United States during the fall of Western civilization.
The Weather Watch forecast.
And outside of my studio window, it's 59 degrees. And in other parts, it's around 55 out there. Sunrise is going to be around 7:04 today, so we got almost 2 hours to wait. And it is going to be a rainy day. And cloudy when it's not raining. I was up in the attic and I took a little movie. But the movie's like a 5-second, the world's fastest movie in the world, so I had to slow it down, which I have that capability here. And I'm going to show you that. Friday, it's going to be sunny, so I'm hoping I'm going to be able to dry out the mess. I was woken up. Anyway.
The Weather Watch forecast.
Yeah. It's been one of those things. I was woken up at 10 o'clock to the sound of drip, drip, drip. And I had to go upstairs, and I had to empty buckets in the darkness, out the window, in the attic. I'm going to try to show you that attic video now. And again, it's choppy because otherwise it would be hard to give you through this medium, live medium is what I'm saying. In other words, I'm going to give you a video on a video, and it's all live. But let's check it out if you enjoy. Here goes. And I'll explain later. You can see the water coming down there. Now let's look at that again. I'll give you a little more of explanation. I'm sure there's some sound in this. But let's check this out. This is the tar I put. These are the various bins. I'll show you a close-up of those. You can see the water dripping there very closely. I'm going to try to, hold on a second. I'm going to try to take this, and I'm going to slow this way down. Like way down this part. And let's see if we can see the drips. Those are cans of tar that I used. Those are boards that had to be ripped out of the wall. And let's see here. You can see a drip there. See the drips coming down? That's a fairly fast drip considering this is slow-mo. And they're coming from up here. And you can see a drip there almost. Yeah, see? And I've got plastic to capture them and to like kind of force them into those bins. Look at the ancient floor. This was a room maybe 100 years ago. And then you've got the drip, 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 the slow little drips here. Brutally honest show. Drip, drip, drip. So you can imagine how this in normal speed, you know, the volume of water that would be coming through. And this would be a close-up of the bins. I've had some friends, you know, in the background, those cream-colored things are like litter boxes. The one looks like kind of dirty. It's just because of the funk of 40,000 years coming through the pipe, you know, not the pipes, through the wall. And the tar and stuff just like kind of coming down. Those were the ideal things. I only paid $1 each for those, like cream, beige, whatever color they are. And these other things are just, well, on the far left is an adapted litter container that I just cut open to turn into a thing. In the very foreground is a cake thing. That red, what looks like a red lip around it is actually the thing you would put on top of the cake to keep it fresh. Then there's like a turkey pan or frying, you know, thing some friend brought over. And these are just various things that I've accumulated. I mean, it's crazy. I'll get to that in a second. And this is, you can see where I actually, from the inside out, this picture tells a lot of stories. One, you can see this rough cut where I had to, with a sawzall, open up the wall, all right, to access where the leaks were coming from. And then this is tar. Basically, I've tarred the areas where the leaks were coming in, but the tar didn't help. Isn't that crazy? You know? I mean, let's look at this. We'll just do a quicker picker-upper. Do a quicker version of the attic video again. Isn't that crazy? And then at midnight again, I had to get up. And that's what I'm dealing with when it rains. You know, it's crazy. That eats up some CPU, I'll tell you. Anyway, so the title of today's show is ROCKFLUX Live 9/23/21. Feels like it's raining all over. And I guess I could have put in the raining all over the world, like that old blues song. Feels like it's raining all over the world. Something like that. Anyway, that's that.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Hello. 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 Hello.
So let's not get too much on a downer, but you know, that is a trip, isn't it? Now that's my third floor. That's what I call the attic. But at one time, maybe this has a 100-year-old house at least, and it's on its last legs, literally. So, but at one point, you can see from that floor that was put down there, and the idea that I had a sawzall out. See, the walls were straight, okay, you know, and what happened is I had to, you know, instead of being where normally the attic would be like the pitch of the roof. So it was like straightened up so that the room, you know, on the room on this side would appear to be a square rectangular room. So I had to sawzall out this to get to the pitch because the leaks are along this pitch, you know. And that was that. So that's that tarp. When you see where I tarred here, I'm tarring. And actually, these aren't the boards, the normal boards there. These are like the tongue and groove boards that you can see roughly cut on the end, which were pretty brittle. But I basically attached them to fill in the voids between the plank, because it was a plank base of a roof, not like big sheets of plywood or that zip system or anything like that. So as these shingles or ceiling, whatever the heck they call them, fell off, just, blown off, rotted away. This all just happened. The first 2 years I lived here, I didn't have any leaks or anything. So I got in this house. It was a dry, sealed house. I had no reason to believe that the roof was on its last leg. And within 2 years or 3 years, it was going to turn into a disaster. Probably took about 3 years, to tell you the truth. I think this just happened in the past 2 years. But now, as you can see from the video, it's completely out of control. And doing that tar, I'm going to have to try to put another coat on, but I can't imagine how it's leaking through the tar. And so, yeah, I have to empty these bins. And see, I have a plastic tarp under it to protect. And for the most part, this has been working. This was my solution from, if you watched my shows from way back. Excuse me, I'm getting all choked up about it. Not really. More hot, please. Waitress. Or like Nicolas Cage said in Leaving Las Vegas, when he wanted another drink. Oh, nurse. Yeah. Let's get a drink. Well, I'll tell you, that attic is something to drive you to drink, and it definitely is.
This is insane. This is insane.
I mean, and yes, last night in the middle of the night.
This is a nightmare. Must be a nightmare.
And for some reason, my cat knocked my laptop off of, the shelf onto the floor, and I didn't even open it up to see if you broke the screen or screwed the thing or just destroyed the thing. I have no idea why. It would have been lying flat. It's a thin air book. That was very weird,
Meow, 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 meow.
Yeah, so he wasn't cute like a meow, 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 but this is what's going on out there right now. This is what was happening all last night. And it was coming in and coming down. I even had a few drops that made it to this Rube Goldberg device I've set up in my above my bed, where I have this plastic thing on an angle that, if in case it gets through from the third floor to the second floor, the water will flow down this piece of plastic and then go down into a bucket that's at the bottom, which has an old sock in it, so I don't hear the sound of the dripping. The sock will absorb it. And I could tell you everything you need to know about how to deal with a leaky house. I was talking to my 87-year-old mother yesterday on the phone, and of course, for her, she thinks it's tragedy. And I said, it's not really a tragedy. I said, 100 years ago, people were still using outhouses in this country. And, we were lucky enough, during the 50s, 60s, and 70s, maybe part of the 80s, but it started to fall apart around in the 80s. When the SNL thing fell apart, that's when, the corporatocracy had basically decided they were going to take back control of the world in this country. But, we had some golden years. That was it, the 50s, 60s, and the 70s, when the working person, the average working person, when there was a real middle class, could actually have a somewhat, respectable life. But we're just what's happening right now systematically is we're just getting back to the point of where, the feudal system. And so, and the same bloodlines, the blue bloods, basically the European blue bloods, the World Economic Forum, the Davos set, I just decided, okay, I've always said this before, they kind of left us alone because we saved their ass in World War II. You know, Europe was in a total state of disarray, and so between the Nazis, the fascists, Mussolini, Hitler, and then of course Stalin in Russia, we saved the Brits and we saved Europe. And so all the blue bloods throughout Europe, the king system, the powers that be, so to speak, they kind of left us alone. And, we had this crazy, innocent time period in the United States, and if you're not old enough to be cognizant of it, at least, I'm old enough to be cognizant of it, at least. I didn't participate in it all, but I was cognizant of it and lived through part of it. It was the best of times. There's just no the best of times, worst of times. The Vietnam War was stuck in between there, Korean and Vietnam Wars. But apart from those tragic, events that could have been avoided as well, just like this Middle Eastern and this Afghanistan thing could have been avoided. But apart from that, the average working person or the GI returning back from a war with the GI Bill, getting a college education, and even if not, there was work, jobs, and you could get a car, a house with a little lawn, and a refrigerator and appliances, and it was and life was like this innocent, fun thing, and the music of that era reflects it. Listen to the music of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Actually, it's some of my favorite music. And it's actually, oddly enough, it's the most sampled and covered music, even in the music of the 90s and the 2000s. And a lot of people don't know that, because there was such happiness and just, easy going, peace, free love, all that jazz going on, that the music was an expression of that. And so they've taken the hooks and certain things that were written back then, particularly even in the 70s. And you'll find that in like modern music, all the hip hop artists and rappers and stuff, they'll all have sampled the little thing and have repeated it, kind of the way I did this thing.
This is insane. This is insane.
It's almost like a, scratching the record, repeating a little section of a thing. But, and that song's from back then too. My chair's fallen down, but what else is new? So I'm not going to get into too much, I feel like it's raining all over the world, so I don't know what it's doing where you are, but if you're lucky enough to have it dry, or if it's raining where you are and you do not have, you're not dealing with like a situation where you have this above your, your bedroom to keep the water from coming down through the floor. More power to you, man. Great solar stuff. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. This is just a clip. When I first turn on YouTube to go live, this is just what was there. And so I thought, as an idea, it's a snapshot, because this isn't, particularly, I don't use YouTube with Chrome. I use Safari as my browser. So this is just stuff that's popped up, randomly. So, this gives you a good idea of, this is America today, in a snapshot. Look at these. The world isn't ready for this. Mila Kunis on cancer culture. Roof mount solar panels done. I mean, it's like got to be like YouTube millionaires, those people. I mean, they just keep buying new trucks and new vehicles and more of this, more of that. And this story about this girl that they found, that this, like, Another one, Our World Isn't Ready for This, Adapt 2030. You should watch Adapt 2030. That David Dubine guy, he's got some interesting things. And then, well, you could read the rest. Pretty crazy. That's just a snapshot of what was there when I went. When I just turned on Chrome, and then I hit the Go Live button, and then I had to set up, do my normal setup stuff. But yeah, it's pretty crazy, and we're still kind of celebrating the book here, which is out, and I ordered mine copies, as I said before, but I probably won't get those for another week or so. Takes about a week to get them. It's what they call print on demand. I have to pull this seat up. It's like sliding down. I was realizing the other day how long I've had this chair, because I saw some photo of like another office where I was, and this chair that I'm on has come along with me. And I think it was, I would say, close to over 20 years, between 20 and 25 years, I've had this chair. I've actually changed, I think they call them casters, the thing somewhere like about 10, 15 years ago, from like, my old desk used to be this really long thing where I used to slide the chair back and around in an L shape because I had a couple of computers set up and stuff and a printer down the end. And I actually wore out those casters. But now it's usually just in this pretty much stable position. I'm sorry for constantly playing with this microphone, but for some reason it has a mind of its own. It's kind of like the chair. It moves. So then what, So, I don't want your sympathy or pity or anything weird like that. That's not why I show you this attic stuff, It's just kind of like, just the bizarrity of it, How does water leak through tar like that? And I tried a lot, I went the process I did for those who are DIY type of people, though I don't know why this would attract them. In between these planks, when I first approached this, I got this there's a hardware store across the street. It's an old fashioned one. It's one of those ones where they have the I was going to say analog, but I mean, literally a mechanical cash register. You push cha-ching. That's where the original thing kind of comes from. And they've got very old stuff in there, but I mean, they buy some new stuff too. And they're plumbers too. I mean, it's more of an office for their plumbing business than it is as a real hardware store. It's not like an Ace or something. Anytime you can't get the stuff you want over there. But anyway, wherever this story's going, no, they sell caulking, right? Because they have painting supplies, and they have one of those paint shaker things and stuff. And I've bought paint. In fact, the paint that I painted the outside of my house with, they have good quality paint, and they have sales on paint, like paints that are older and stuff from the old days. They'll put that out and sell it for like $8 a can and stuff. I mean, you can't get paint. Paint today costs you $30 a can or more, And this stuff I've gotten some good paint for them, discounted. In fact, I have a bunch of cans in the house because I've gone over there and came back with like 4 cans. So anyway, but they have this like little caulking rack, and there are different degrees of types of caulking. The type of caulk you put in a caulk, the gun thing, the thing and it, feeds it the tube of caulk, not like, not some thing you just buy that looks like a toothpaste tube. No, the real, real contractor type of caulking. And so they have like this rack, and it has varying degrees, stuff that's rated for, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, painter's caulk, bathroom caulk. And the last time I was over there, which was, I don't know, within the last month, there was, they had this caulk that was water resistant, waterproof, I think it said actually. It dried in 20 minutes. So it was this, some modern compound, 20-minute drying time, water, resistant. It was like $3.99 for one of these tubes, that you put in your caulk thing. So I bought like 4 of them. And I put that in between these wooden slats, because, the water could only come in from one place. It's not coming through the planks. I mean, the wood itself. I mean, unless there's a hole in the wood. But I mean, the one thing about the wood, this is an old house and it's old wood. But even when I had the plumbers in, because when I first moved in here, I had to open up a wall to make my bathroom bigger because I wanted to put a vanity in. It just had a sink on the wall. And I had to basically, open up a wall and take some space away from the back bedroom in order to fit a vanity so there was enough room in the bathroom without it, having to walk sideways to get to the toilet or something. And, and there was an old-time plumber and his assistant was there. But even the old-time plumber, was looking at the interior beams of the house and was remarking on the wood quality and saying, look at this wood. They don't use wood like this anymore. And, it was 100-year-old wood, and it was just still sturdy and strong, wood. So it's they just don't, when they say they don't make them like they used to, they don't make them like they used to. So the wood itself, whatever, was the finest wood at the time that they built. And these planks are still sturdy. They're not like rotted. It's not, the exterior stuff that, the stuff that I put here, what seems to be green on the left, which is basically then I transferred what I cut from there. If you look closely, the stuff that's tarred, and there's some areas that were painted white, and that was like a sealant paint too. That wasn't just like white paint. That was like a roofer's paint. I basically took those green boards and I put them there. Now they were a little bit brittle. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to build, cover the seams. Like, you got a plank that's probably a 1x6, something like that. I think like a 1x6 or a 1x8. I'm not sure if they're an 8, but at least 6, 1x6. And that's the planking that they would have built the basis of the roof along these rafters, which are these sturdy, real sturdy boards. Good wood. And they're still in good shape, those boards. And the planks don't show any sign of like deterioration either, really. It was like good wood. And, I watch all these shows about these guys who like mill wood and all that stuff, and they're always talking about different trees and things like that. But I'm not an expert on that. But I know from time to time they talk about certain woods that, will last, forever almost, or, long time. And whatever it was, that's what they used for this thing. But that tongue and groove green stuff there, And they may have turned this into a bedroom or some kind of room. Maybe it wasn't 100 years ago. It could have been maybe 60 years ago. I don't know when. I have had no conversations with the previous owner. Had died well before this house sat empty for a year or two, I think. That's how I got it so cheap. Nobody was buying it. It was formerly a barber shop. So I guess people just figured, oh, it's a barber shop. Who wants to live there? But it really wasn't. It was just a house converted to a barber shop. This room is the barber shop. I'm broadcasting live from the barber shop. Waitress. More hot. You got to drink it fast because it loses that hot. It's crazy. So you would think, that, and so I'm tar over top of this, let me just put this down here. I tar over top of these planks. Oh no, I was talking about the hardware store and this stuff. It was $3.99 a tube, okay, and it was this really cool stuff. It was like ideal, and I was willing to pay $4 a tube for it. And I don't you could go to the Dollar Tree and get bathroom caulk for $1 a tube. I mean, it's not as big a tube or anything, but it works, and I've used it in my around my tub area and sink area, and that stuff is doing fine, holding up for years, still in good shape, and you can put spray cleaner on it and all that stuff and clean it, and it's holds it's not like it's not falling apart. So I figure, okay, $4, $3.99, enough of these 99s. So I put this in between the planks. And I figure, okay, well, that's where the water's coming in, because I've actually seen the water come in, between the planks. So I'm caulking in between the planks. I paint over top of that with with this roofer paint. It's like it was actually, I think it called Snow Roof or something, right? I think maybe before I even did that, I had put this stuff, which like a sealant even type of stuff, just to preserve the wood. And then I added, as you can see here, tar. The white would have been the roofer's, the waterproof sealant primer, Might have even been like a Kills type of thing, that stuff, KILZ. And, that's anti-mold and all that kind of stuff. Because I'm trying, as crazy as this looks, I'm a clean person and I want to have a clean house. And then recently, anyway, so I put in that good sealant between the boards, covered everything. And then, and this was a step-by-step process. I didn't rush it. And I had some nice hot days. So, this stuff really kind of got a chance to bake in there and dry very well. And then I put this tar, and you can see this tar. And this tar is dry to the touch. And so, for once I just opened up the thing. Good morning. I don't know if Trace is still there or not, but I only periodically check the chat because the screen is only so big, and there are 2 apps open in order to broadcast live. There's YouTube Studio, which you could just do this like live and wing it, but there's no way you could if you did that. There's no way you're going to have a then what book. You see how I've got that flash in here? There's no way you're going to do that with YouTube Studio Live. So I have a second program over top of YouTube Studio. I can see YouTube Studio's basic setting, which says excellent connection, and a little bit of the analytics to give me an idea. But if I want to check the chat, I have to literally go away from my main screen control center to do that. And I periodically do check, but sometimes I get get into a ramble and I don't. So if I don't reply to your chat, don't take it personally. I just didn't see it, or I saw it, and people come in and out, and I saw it maybe after you left or something. I don't know, who comes in and who comes out at a particular time. I could see this, people do come in and out. The handful that there is. So yeah, so nothing worked. And then everybody I talk to says, well, what about that stuff with that guy on TV, that put it on the bottom of a screen and got in a boat, or covers up that, this flow of water is coming out of some kind of container and he just slaps on this thing. What about that stuff? And I was with a friend of mine, went up to Ace Hardware, and they have that on the end of the aisle. Excuse me. And if you watched yesterday's show at all, I was talking about supermarket marketing and how hard it is to get your product on the end of aisle. In other words, you have to give them something for that. They don't just put it there. You have to give extra. It's usually like they negotiate in cases. I think that keeps it away from being like payola or something. My voice is not the greatest. Excuse me. Because I woke up so many times last night dealing with the horror of this all. Sorry. Whenever this stuff happens, it's like...
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
And,
This is a nightmare. Must be a nightmare.
But it's not. So like I was thinking, I've got a couple things going on here at once. So I was talking about how I was talking to my 87-year-old mother about it. Who can't imagine, I don't know if this throat's going to get clear or not, ever try to talk through it. And, to her, oh, this is this is horrible, Of course, she's been trapped. She's in Florida. They retired in Florida years ago, and she's in a place. She has her own place, but it's like a shared place where it's like, they have a common like cafe dining thing, but they have their own rooms and refrigerator and apartments and stuff. But I mean, it's like kind of a, it's not necessarily managed care, because there's no really care they offer there. But I mean, it's like, it's like a Florida type of place for people to retire. And we have, they have somebody comes in and, cleans the place for them and stuff like that. Well, anyway. So, in her mind, and she was always kept a clean house. So in her mind, the idea of this is like, how could you live like that? I said, and that's how I started this show off. I was saying 100 years ago here in this country, people were using outhouses. Right? I mean, after all 2,000 years ago, the Romans had, baths and toilets and multi-story buildings and, and all that stuff. And the elite had running water and all that stuff. But the general public had access to public baths and, and all of that. But, 2,000 years later in the settlement of this country, and even in the early part of the 20th century, people had outhouses. So it wasn't until, there's been a very short-lived time of modernity, if you want to call it that. And so I look at it and say, look, there's a trade-off. It's unfortunate. When I moved into this place, it was move-in ready. I was just basically, my primary, things that I had to do were things like caulk around the tub. I did enlarge the bathroom just slightly to put a new vanity and a sink in it. And painted some walls and, did that kind of stuff. Cleaned up, ripped up some old carpet that was there. Then there were hardwood floors underneath it. And I just kind of restored those hardwood floors. So basically, it was ready to go, just, clean up, fix up stuff, cosmetic, more or less. And the exterior was the same thing. I had a lot of sanding and scraping to do. But I just painted it, and sealed, painted and caulked and painted. And, but now after I've been here almost 6 years, I guess it's been, it's starting to, the age of this place is starting to show. And it's all, it's at that point where it's outlived its life expectancy, I guess. But I'm here. I'm stuck here. I'm committed. So I poured too much coffee into my coffee cup. I hate when I do that. There was just a little bit more. You see. So I don't, you have to learn to adapt. If you're John Lennon, working class hero. So you work through it. I'll deal with it. I made strong, little strides here and there. My hallway, when it had made it down into the hallway, the disaster I had a couple of weeks ago, I had the dehumidifier. I have a dehumidifier, so I put the dehumidifier right on that spot, dried that whole area out. Luckily, that there were like a couple days of 80-degree weather outside, so I had this this floor fan in the one window just circulating the attic, so I'm drying out the attic. I've got down below the attic on the second floor, I've got a dehumidifier drying that, and I dried everything out. I took some mud, spackle, whatever. Scraped all the paint with it where it got wet, but it was all dried straight through the plaster, because I hit it from both sides, dried from the attic and dried from below with the dehumidifier. And then I put a good, some of that Kills primer on it and patched, and so the hallway is fine. And I'm almost at the point, despite looking at this scary picture, this is right above the hallway. That's why I have so many of those things there. This is right above that area that, that leaked. So I'm not exactly ready to repaint that ceiling yet, because I'm afraid, there could still be a potential leak there. I'm sorry to waste the whole show on this, but, I think it's kind of interesting. It's why people watch YouTube and feels like it's raining all over the world. Of course, this does not follow suit with the title card, does it now? So let me look at my title card, which was, bring that up if I can. My mouse, Mr. Mouse, are you going to work? Okay. Let's take the Then What book and I'll shrink that back down. But I'm just here saying, if you had an old computer and you had a disk drive in it, there was CD or even sometimes a floppy disk, the old hard floppy disks. If you took the paper clip, there was a pinhole. In fact, the one I have back here, all right, which I show sometimes, has that hole on it. I don't know if I can show that to you or not. I'll try. Let's see. I'll get out of the way. I have to remember which way to go and get the light in there. You can see the slot, there, but you can't, you'd have to have like crazy eyes, but there's a little hole next to that slot to manually eject the sloppy disk, the floppy disk. And I don't know if it's just, isn't it amazing how the original Mac looked like, that the ultimate computer in that movie, my mind's going blank. The movie, it was based on a book from the 60s about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. That brain still works. It's amazing that data that's stored in this supercomputer we have. Like I said, if they'd only put as much work into our supercomputer brain, figuring all that out, and the hard problem of consciousness, which I've talked about in my previous book, as they're putting into AI, GPT-3 and spaceflight, going to Mars, it'd be a whole different world, but no, we treat ailments we don't cure. That's what we do today. But, this was originally yesterday. I made this title card that's on the screen, remembering the way it used to be, which is kind of what I'm talking about, even dealing with this, the craziness of the attic and the rain and all that. But those computers, yeah, they, I stand by it and I say it repeatedly that I preferred my computer and computing in the late 90s, early 2000s. And when you hear me, do this.
Channel check. Left channel. Left channel.
That's done on a G5 computer that's being fed into this computer, which I have Photoshop, InDesign, Adobe Illustrator, a program called Freehand, which was one of the early, vector type of art programs. Clara's homepage, which is really, really quick and easy way to create a good HTML website. And, of course, I have iTunes and the old iMovie, and you can there's a CD player and recorder on this thing, DVD recorder. The whole 9 yards. And that machine cost like $1,000 and it sounds like a lot of money. I think it was around $1,000. But if you wanted a comparable computer to that thing that's giving me this fluorescent white glow, people have calculated it would cost you $10,000. And that's not, and this is this is in the 2000s. This isn't like, so it's not, you can't say, well, considering inflation. Yeah, we're dealing with runaway, hyperinflation right now. The price of everything's going up. But no, computers and computing is just not as good as it was. There's a lot of eye candy. There's a lot of GUIs, graphical user interfaces, and apps that you could buy, from anywhere from $1.99 at the App Store to, $29.99. And then there's the cloud service apps, which are like extortion as far as I'm concerned, where they charge you, depending on what you want, whether it's one app or a series of apps. I was paying $50 some dollars to Adobe every month for a couple of years, to use the Photoshop and InDesign and stuff like that. And the thing is, I have on this other computer, I have those programs because I bought them. I've said this before. I have the box. I have the CD. They work on that old machine, but they won't work on this machine. You see? Just like this machine that I'm talking to you from right now, that will not take the latest operating system. Right? So why is that? But what's interesting is they will update things like Safari, their browser, or their, music program, like anything to do with you buying something from them. Right? So the Apple TV app works just fine on here if I want to buy a movie. Right? And Safari works fine if people want to buy stuff, for e-commerce on a computer. But this computer will not take the new operating system, so I could have these other features or I could use other things. And like I say, follow the money. It's all about the money. And so money, that's what happened. Money destroyed. Greed, in a sense, brought down the internet. Diverted the way the internet was developing. So when you had what they call the .com bubble burst, which that was a stock problem. That's speculators. That's like 2008, they said, the real estate market burst. No, it didn't. It was like countryside. It was all these traders, with all these exotic, financial the way they were repackaging mortgages and selling them like, multiple times over and all that stuff. And they try to put it on a specific thing, And so greed, like unlike in Wall Street, greed is good, And, when you're watching that movie, you get into it and, it's like Gecko and, you kind of, it's like anything, you kind of you kind of could you get caught. A good characterization, a good writer can write a character, even the guy who's, whether they're the antagonist or the protagonist, there's a certain matter of like where you kind of root for them or you like them. There's likable qualities even in the negative characters, put it that way. And, it's funny, in the early days of CNBC, they basically, the titles of their show were pretty much based on all the early part of the movie Wall Street. They used to have a show called Wake Up Call. Remember he's on the beach with the old-fashioned cell phone, early phone. It's your wake-up call. right? And then they had, and various other terminology were like the names of shows like on CNBC. So the Wall Streeters, so they were all on, Greed is Good. They didn't, that last portion of the movie where, Gecko got caught or whatever, they just ignored that aspect of that movie. And, they like the Wall Streeters like the first part. But it's it's like that saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely or something like that, which is the truth, and so greed is not good, and greed destroyed the internet. And so remembering the way it used to be, I'm telling you, I was there. I was using the computers. I had that, back here, which I showed you before, is the original Mac. And by the way, that cost $1,000 when it was new. Isn't that interesting? So, and there were some amazing things you could do with that computer back then. And that was 1985. Commercial came out in 1984, and those things were like shipping in and I had bought mine in 1985. They were like shipping in 85, I think. And I have two of them. I had, because one of them I left. One of them I took apart because it eventually just fried. I mean, from 1985. And so in 2005 or something, I took it apart because it was useless and I wanted to keep one intact. This one still turns on, actually. But anyway, I took it apart, and inside that, because people were converting them everybody was converting them anything from fish bowls, goldfish bowls, to, I made mine. I put a little wooden shelf underneath the monitor portion of it, and I used to had it on my desk, and I used it as a place to store like CDs, CDs, program CDs and stuff I was using for my computer. It's kind of funky. But inside that, in in their own handwriting, Steve Jobs, Wozniak, and the original team that developed the Mac, the classic Mac, their names are all in there carved inside that computer. And you would have to take it apart, to know that. Yeah, it's just a little bit of trivia. It's a true story. But yeah, the stuff they're making now is, it's fantastical devices, but, I've gone onto the website, Mac website, Apple website, and I've priced out a model of a computer that would do what my computers have done for me, or what I would like to be done. And it would be anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 to have a system to do what I would want. And then, of course, the software, would be... some of the software just doesn't even exist anymore. You can't even get it. I have some interesting stuff on here. I have a program on there called Wiretap Pro, which allows you to record sound clips from anything and instantly convert it into like an MP3 file or some various other formats. Well, because of, copyright this or whatever. It's the same as YouTube. Like, I should be able to play a song right now, but I can't. I'm not going to get on that roll and talk about that. But yeah, remembering the way it used to be, I mean, those days are gone forever, as I said, from like a Steely Dan song, over a long time ago. It's a line from a Steely Dan song. I think that's that line I put in my book. But yeah, that's a title card. So if you tuned in for that, you know, you're getting that coverage. And of course, I was looking for my mug, and Boozilla's still here. Yeah, but that attic video, man. And I don't know what happened with that thing. Like, the weirdest thing about it is, it's, if I have it at 100%, like, I didn't do anything. This is shot on my old that's how it, that's the original video. Let's do that again. That's 100%. No weird. I shot it on the, it's in the other room. I have an old iPad, and that's what I shot it on. And it's it's weird. Really weird. For some reason, it's a 5-second video, but there was no speed control or anything weird like that. But luckily, this program, it's again like one of the reasons why, like I say, I can't keep up with the chat, is because this program has certain controls on it. And then, of course, I'm also over here constantly, you know, controlling, you know, these other things. So I don't have that ability to jump back and forth. So that was a belch. One of the few shows where you will get a belch on the air. But yeah, this is fun. I'm back on the airwaves again. I got to drink this coffee before it gets ice cold. Right now it's lukewarm. Now, for the sake of it, let's figure this out. New window. You can't see what I'm doing. Origin of the phrase lukewarm. Lukewarm's exact origin is still up for debate, but the most popular theory suggests it first appeared in the late 14th century and was derived from either Middle Dutch or Old Frisian. The term leuk, L-E-U-K, meant tepid or weak. However, as the word blog Sesquitokia points out, L-A-U-W, Lao. So, and it seems other people confirm that same thing. So possibly lukewarm came from the 14th century. Possibly. We don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And everything you know is wrong. So yeah, it's in the 50s, and it's going to be in the 50s tonight. And for some reason, you are going to get a freeze on your computer, but stay tuned, please. Something happened for some reason. Why? The stream will end shortly unless you restart it in your streaming software. What's going on? Sorry about this, folks. YouTube is not receiving enough data. It's starting to come back. Looks like we're back. I apologize for that freeze. Hopefully you stayed tuned. There's no explanation for that whatsoever. No explanation. Right now, we're broadcasting at 30 frames per second. My CPU usage is down only 6.7%, and my kilobytes per second are around 3,000 kilobytes per second. So YouTube should be receiving strong signal. That was weird. Was it because I looked up lukewarm? Mentioned the 14th century? Or previously criticized cloud software? Who knows? Anyway, as long as you stayed with me, welcome back. And I'm looking at the play because there's a delay in a broadcast, and I'm looking over at the YouTube studio thing, and it's like I got this goofy face on. Yeah, it always happens to freeze at something like that. Anyway, if that happens again, just fast forward, Welcome to YouTube, I'm just glad that I'm able to do this thing. Now it says excellent connection. And again, this is one of the reasons why I don't check the chat, all right? Because I have to basically be monitoring this stuff to know that I'm broadcasting. Because this happens often. Not every show, but like every other show or every third show, I've if I'm not looking at something, I'm like, hey, wait a second, I'm not, I'm frozen over there. It's weird. So what am I supposed to do? Buy a new Mac? Well, they're going to announce the new Macs, I guess, next month. Now, I don't know if it's just going to be laptops or the actual Macs. There are new iMacs out, I know. I mean, that came out last spring. But I'm not in the market to spend another $1,000 or $2,000 or more for these newer machines. It's just like the iPhones. Like the new OS 15, I think, is out for the iPhone. And the iPhone is iPhone 13 is the one they just released, if you're not a Mac person or if you haven't been keeping up with this stuff. But iPhone 14, people have already leaked it, and that is a much better iPhone. And that's not coming out till like next spring, or it could even be next fall before it's actually for sale. But, so, we're down to forget about Moore's Law, 18 months. We've already taken chips down to, to where you can't get any smaller, So things are changing. There's a whole new dynamic in processing, and there, a whole new direction. And the idea was that not only were the chips shrinking, but the price was supposedly to shrink as well. So that eventually these devices would be very cheap and easy for anyone to afford. Okay? That's not the way it is. And so now it's not 18 months. It's like you almost have to buy a new phone every year, to get the latest and the greatest. And I say, why are we even still selling phones? Smartphones, the concept, why haven't they jumped to something like revolutionary? And I'm not talking like the iWatch. The other day I was talking about it and I was watching the playback. I watch these things. I say that all the time. I do. I'll watch the whole show. It's content. Because it's, there's a couple of other things I watch on YouTube, but one of them is me. And these are, if I do a 2-hour show, it's 2 hours of content. So I can kick back and relax. It's 6:17 a.m. in the morning. There's nothing I can do at this time. It's still dark. I can't even feed the birds. It's raining outside. So when this show's over, I'll basically go upstairs and I'll watch the playback. I'm curious to see how long it was frozen. But yeah, computing has just gone downhill. And people disagree with that because they don't, it depends on when you jumped into the game. And you might say, well, if your first if you just jumped in and bought, if this is like for someone who just bought a new iPhone and it's their first smartphone, so to speak, or their first iPhone. well, that's like they're new to the game. But if somebody who's been using them since forever is going, these things really haven't changed, and they're not as good as they used to be. That's a bold statement. But, the original iPhone, which I have back here, and you can see I have it attached to a USB cable. Okay. Because what I've been trying to do, the black mirror, mirroring the screen. Because what I was trying to do, and that's how it used to be able to charge it with that big thing. Well, anyway, supposedly the new iPhone, the leaked pictures, they're going to be thick like this again. The iPhone 14 is going to look something like this. See, they lost that Johnny Ive guy, There's me in there. You don't know what you don't know. And so they don't really have great industrial design. But anyway, this particular thing, which was, you could buy one of these, was identical to an iPad just like it. And what you did was, if you bought an iPhone, it had the phone app on it, and it had the cell capability. But you could buy an iPhone and you could get an app. And there were a couple of companies that had Wi-Fi apps even back then. But anyway, this thing still works, but the batteries needs charging. But whatever they've done, and they do this, when they do updates, on systems, I've had a couple of, even though this system on the computer I'm talking to you now on is one system behind, because it'll tell you. I mean, I'll go look at it. Hopefully this won't, if I freeze up for any reason, just fast forward till I'm back on. But I'm going to check about this Mac, and this might do something. I'm using Catalina, so this is 10.15.7, okay? I got 16 gigabytes of DRAM in this thing. It's a quad-core processor and all that stuff. But it won't run the current operating system. So in other words, what they're telling me is this, between this monitor, which is a Thunderbolt early edition, which is discontinued, and it's ginormous. All right? It's at least 27 inches. I think it's about a 27-inch monitor. I don't know. Glass, beautiful thing. Has plugins on the back of it. There's ports on the back of it, so it expands your capability of inputs. And then the Mac I'm using to power it, that was $1,000, and the monitor was $1,000. So it's a $2,000 system. Okay. And basically, Apple said, and one of the reasons I stopped Adobe wasn't so much just because of the $54 a month that I had to pay for software that I already owned, right? I owned it. I mean, it's one thing, when you go back to the idea of where I have, my mouse is acting slow today, but I talk about remembering the way it used to be. You used to, when you had software before, all right, of course there was going to be an upgrade, and maybe the first upgrade was free, but there was R&D involved, and they may have put in some the development team had to work on it. Those people had to be paid, so sometimes there would be an upgrade fee, to get the the new and improved version. And I had no problem with that. Sometimes it was $69. Sometimes it was as high as $99. Always with the nines, right? Why didn't you just say $100, right? But okay, that's fine. I bought the program originally for whatever, $69.99, you know, $700. And now you're saying, okay, after a year or two, there's a major upgrade, you know, pay $99 or $129 to get this new and improved version. And you go, okay, that's fine. It's $129. You know, I've had it for 2 years and you've got some major upgrades. That's fine. But see, the problem with the cloud concept is that if you're paying $50-some a year, right, you know, to get like the family of, say, Adobe products or something, you know, or at least the ones I had was like $55. I don't know. Let's say it's like $50. Okay. We'll lowball it. All right. It's more than that, but let's say 50. That's $600 a year. All right. So in 10 years' time, all right, you paid $6,000. All right. Well, there's no way in hell that you would have, you know, these programs, when, you know, wouldn't cost, you know, that much money. And, you know, 10 years passes, you know, if you're young, you know, sometimes 10 years seems like, oh, well, it's a lifetime away. It passes. Trust me. 10 years goes pretty fast. And oddly enough, things like Facebook and the smartphone and all that stuff have only been around 10 to 15 years. That's the joke about it. So for a guy like me, I'm looking at him going like, man, they're a passing fancy. Those things haven't even been around that long in the grand scheme of things. I've seen things that have lasted for 10 or 12 years that, you know, 5 years later, you know, people go, what? Right? So, yeah, if you know, if this were to continue, so if somebody, you know, was like, you know, for 20 years, you know, was paying Adobe, you'd be paying him $12,000 for software. That's just to Adobe. And in that 20 years' time, think about how many times you will have had to have bought a new iPhone or smartphone, Android, whatever, and a new computer. Even if you waited 5 years, you would have bought 4 computers. You know, base models, even if you bought the base models for like $1,000 or so each, you know, some kind of, you know, you could be talking like $4,000 or $5,000 there, $12,000 in software, you know, and then remember all the, you know, cellular fees and other stuff. Yeah, it's a ridiculous amount of money. That's why these are $1 billion. I think Apple is a $1 trillion company. Is it? Aren't they? Are they up to $1 trillion now? Something ridiculous like that. But they're all like raking in hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's what I was talking about earlier. Greed is not good. Greed brought down the system, you know? And so the idea, remembering the way it was when everybody was sharing stuff and doing this, that, the other, we were all paying our way. I bought every Mac, right? I gave Apple an awful lot of money since 1985, right? I bought almost every model that came out. And I'm like, I always tell people, I'm not one of those guys that, you know, because I work in graphics, you know, ED, because I'm retired. I don't do that stuff anymore, just for people I know. And my own stuff, you know, like I'll design my own book cover, like the one that's on the screen, or the one I'm, you know, the sample printout from my color printer, which oddly still works. But, you know, people always go on these free font sites, right? It's like, no, I never did. I bought, you know, I had the entire Adobe library. You know, I purchased it. And then there's like all these odd fonts, you know, like a funky font would come out. There's all kinds of font houses. They call them houses out there. And I would pay for them. And I'd buy a family of fonts for $99 or $129. You know, wouldn't think twice. Sometimes I'd buy a font and it'd only be $29 or $39. but I owned it. And like I say, I have a version of Photoshop on this other computer that still works, and a version of InDesign on this computer that still works. And I have, it's upstairs in the attic. It's probably wet by now, but I have a box up there that contains the boxes of software that I originally purchased. You know? So, you know, it's like I don't game the system, and I'm not against good old fashioned capitalism and somebody making a living and even making a hefty profit in business. You know, that's fine. Employees need to be paid. You know, the government's taxing you. You know, you've got real estate prices go up. You know, you've got to, you know, pay your bills, and you've got to make a living. So you charge a price. But this idea of greed goes beyond that point. You know, it's price gouging. People taking advantage, you know, of a situation. They've got people brainwashed or addicted to a device, a way of life, right? I mean, that's what this is. You know, I see, to me, nothing, I've never been that type of person that I felt like I had to be part of in fact, one of my books, you know, we can get to them. You get so many weird things here. Without destroying, you know, well, fortunately, it's right on top. My second book was The Nonconformist. You know? That's a picture I took, by the way. Some of my other books. There was book 6. This is a great book. My Life is a Surrealistic Nightmare. This is when I used to lean a little left, the handbook, before I knew the truth about climate change. And then I basically came out with a book, The Truth About Everything. Well, those are just some of my books. And now, of course, we've got the new one here, you know, Then What, which is available now at Tony Caravan Live and ROCKFLUX.com. Oop, whoa. Well, look what popped up. I'm looking for something, and there we go. And, of course, we talked about Great Solar Stuff, and I'm going to keep pushing that because Great Solar Stuff is where you can get the jackery and solar panels and things that will help you in your daily life. And like I say, I don't make a living from this. I'm not monetized. I'm not a YouTube millionaire. I live at the poverty level, basically. You know, I'm just doing this. This is my service to others. You want to believe that or not? It's the truth. Read my books. You know, I've got Codex right here. Like, I advise you, you know, advise you. I do. Get Codex, my previous book, and then get Then What here, you know. And if you go to TonyCaravanLive.com, RockFlux.com, it's the same page. It's not really a website. It's a page. There's a link to both of those things, and get the print editions. I've looked at the Kindle and the Apple Books version, and they're not as good. There's like the reflow of text. You know, I said this yesterday, but I get different viewers all the time. So it bears repeating, and maybe you glossed over it because people don't watch for the whole 2 hours. So you might have missed it if you're a regular viewer. one of my few handful of regular viewers. And the idea is that you could see my scruffy beard a little bit. But anyway, I used a program on this computer because I can't use InDesign that's on the other computer. All right. Because just the way it's an older version and it doesn't have the export to like EPUB and all that kind of stuff. And if you don't understand that, that's just technical jargon for how these ebooks and, that kind of Kindle and Apple books and stuff, the formats that they use. From a print standpoint, yes, I could do it. But anyway, so I do this, I create this book on this is an Apple computer, right? A Mac. It's not that old, okay? But it's not new, all right? This computer, the one over here that I do this stuff from.
Really funny. Really funny. What do you mean I'm funny? It's funny,
That one is old. That's older. Okay? That goes back to the point of, that's about, right around the time when the iPhone and Facebook were just coming out. So in my mind, that's getting old. But it's not that old. It still works. You just heard it. I use it mainly as an audio thing. But I use Photoshop on there. In fact, this cover, which is on the screen, was designed on Photoshop on that computer that I just played the sound effects from, Right?
Okay.
Yeah. And so I did this. I used this computer that I'm looking at you through on a program, Apple program Mac program called Pages, which is current and up to date. Again, anything that they can tie into their system so that they can make a buck, they update. But anything that is like outside of their sphere of influence or they're not going to make a buck on, they don't update. They want you to get a new computer. All right. And so that's the phase we're at right now. They are phasing out this computer I have, which still works perfectly fine. And I'm coming to you live on it. It just says no data. Excellent connection now. See, I think there's certain keywords where when you say something, you criticize a thing, they just like cut you out. You may not have noticed that, but I did. Okay, so Pages is the program. It's called Pages, Pages. And so it's Apple's it's beyond, it's their Word, because you could you could export a Pages file in Microsoft Word format. You could export it as a PDF file, and, various rich text document, all that kind of stuff. So, and also as an EPUB, right? But under the file menu, there's a thing that says export to Apple Books. Now think about that for a second. I'm on an Apple computer using an Apple software program. I've written a book, okay? Created a book in that program. Done nothing weird or anything, right, unusual. I go to File, pull down the File menu, and say, Send to Apple Books. And I have an account on Apple Books because I had, prior to this, 9 books for sale at Apple on Apple Books. They're for sale there. Now I have 10 books for sale on Apple Books. 10 books. All right. Okay, so I do that, And, I put in my login info, and it has all, the data collection that they have. They have all my account information, and, and it pulled all this stuff out of this Pages thing. So I didn't have to go through this effort of putting my own sample pages up and different things like that. I literally just had to set the price and say that it could be available in all countries and different things like that. Some very simplistic stuff. And before you hit publish or whatever the button is, upload, publish, whatever, there's a preview. So I click on the preview. All right. But I also, when I was saving it, I saved it you have two choices on how to present the book. One is to allow it to auto flow or, flowable text. And the other one is preserve pages, preserve layout, which means if somebody looks at it, it's basically supposed to be like a PDF file, more or less, meaning when you flip through it, you're going to see the page exactly the way I set it up. And that's the one I checked that box. So I click on preview and I look at it, and the book's out of whack. And I'm like, what the? And then I get an email. I don't have my email program open, and if I do that, we'll probably get another one of those freeze up, so it's not worth the hassle. And yesterday morning, I get an email. They were the last ones to come through. Kindle approved it first, then Amazon. Well, Kindle is part of Amazon, but then Amazon itself approved the print copy, so the print copy's for sale. I immediately ordered myself 10 copies. And then yesterday morning, I got the notification from Apple Books. Your book is now available at Apple Books. Without hesitation. What is this, algorithms doing this or whatever? The book is not, you can read the text and you could see, I guess 90% of the images. But right at the very outset, there's some there's just some funky stuff going on with the way the graphics and the photos, the text is changed, the fonts are gone. And, where a photo, I was talking about this house, and I'll give you a little, this house, I believe, was originally a Sears Roebuck and Company. People used to buy houses from the Sears catalog, if you know what Sears is. And I've talked about this before, so I'm not going to dwell on it. But I found a picture of a similar Dutch colonial house, and I was talking about that, because this is a flow of consciousness book. It's it's part autobiographical. It's just whatever was on my mind. There's even there's a short horror story in there. There's all kinds of. It's a good book. It's interesting. It's an interesting read, and it's fun. And that's why I say get the print version. But anyway, so that particular image of the Dutch colonial house was not in the right spot. So you'll be reading something, and then you'll say in the photo, so I might say in the image on the left, you can see, but somebody reading it on Kindle or Apple Books will go what image on the left? And then maybe 2 pages later, or that was 3 pages earlier, there's that image. Now, how could a program that is an Apple program on an Apple computer, all right, that literally has a drop-down menu file that exports it directly, that syncs with their server, identifies me, my login, pulls the information. In other words, it's all happening. It's just doing its stuff, right? Algorithmically. And how can it end up, and then approving it, right? and putting it out for sale. You could go buy it right now for like $1.99 or something like that. I just sell these things cheap. Like I said, I don't make any money on this stuff. You know, I might get, who knows, I might make 20 cents on that. I don't know what the commission would be on something like that. But I don't advise doing it because you're not going to get the full thing. You want to have the print version because at least you'll understand what's going on. Plus, there's some forms in there. There's like 2 or 3 things that you can like fill out and, worksheets, not forms, like nothing you send anywhere, but I mean like worksheets and different things and stuff. I don't know. It works. The print version, it's a book. A book should be printed. Okay. And so how is that possible? And, people are touting this, AI and algorithms and all that stuff. And in Codex, I talk about AI a bit. And, I was caught up in that whole scene. But I realized, and some people have uncovered this lately, what you have to understand about AI is that it's not what people are telling you it is. And the algorithms aren't that great. It's how good the code is written and what access that particular AI system has, to whatever data, or whatever it's supposed to do. So for example, you can create a closed system like for AI right now. Like people, this is interesting, even for the person that isn't a techie. You should know this because this is the world we live in. Everything's algorithms. Everything's AI. When you go to customer service and you use that chat, that's a chatbot. That's AI. That's an AI chatbot. That's not a human being. All right. And it's drawing on, information that it has available to it. It's that the code, is allowing, is basically, it's giving it access to this, whatever, and so this GPT-3 current version of AI has access to things like Wikipedia knowledge and certain things. I think even like the Washington Post or New York Times or something weird like that. There's certain archives. So you can ask it questions and it has the ability to formulate. One of the nice things about it, and and I agree with that, is that it's conversational. So the current level of AI is able to put a sentence together in an answer. So when you ask a computer, but it's not like Star Trek. It's the same with these Echo Box, Echo Dots and, Siri and Cortana. And of course, the other one that begins with an A, which I have one in the other room. If I say the name, it's going to like activate itself or something. But those things are dumb. See, they're just doing their code, all right, is set up for them to be, if you ask us to respond to a specific question, all right, so they have voice recognition software, all right, and what it does is when you ask it what the weather is, it will access, it knows your location, obviously, it's programmed for you. So it'll say the weather in your area is blank. Later on today, it'll be such and such. If you ask it to play a song, it has access to the Amazon Music Library. And if you have the unlimited music, library, then it'll play any song that's in the Amazon library for you. In other words, its memory, its data bank is based upon what it has access to and how the code's been written. Just like a chatbot has access to the same thing as if you were talking to a human being, right? What's on your account, So when you go to, if you're an online shopper, say, and you go to, Amazon, just to stick with Amazon, for example, and you go to my account or whatever the heck it is, profile, previous orders, just status, track shipment, okay? You have access to that information too. And anybody at Amazon, if there was a human there, they would have access to it. But these chatbots have access to that information. So if a question is asked through chat, all it's doing is drawing on that same database that you or someone else can. Now, there may be certain things that only an Amazon employee or an administrator or a supervisor has extra access to, such as maybe credit card information or something else. And they'll say, give us your last 4 digits of your Social Security for us to give you this information. If you're talking to a human, lucky enough to talk to a human. But that's what AI is. AI is only what it is programmed to be. And you might see these things on TV or on YouTube, but I'm sure they're on TV too, like where they bring out these avatar type of AIs, or even what's that one? The one that they don't put the hair on, they show the head, she's a citizeness of like Saudi Arabia or something now, this robot. And, people don't understand that is like programmed. And when you see these avatar videos and these people talking, the AI is not capable of real-time conversations. They're set up for chat. So, what they do is I've been into this. And I've seen guys who are involved in this explain it. What they have to do is they have to text chat to the AI. All right. The AI gives an answer in text. All right. They change that voice to text, whatever the voice is, and then sync that with an avatar. And then the person who asked the text originally then just voices what they text. And then they edit the whole thing together. This is a process. And so if I were going, hey, Letitia, what's the weather outside? And then the Letitia avatar would pop up and say it's 56 degrees, and later today it's going to be cloudy and rainy. The process of doing that is not real time. That what you're seeing is basically edited together. That's the current state of AI. Now, if you want to chat directly with it, you can do that. It is text chattable, and it can produce a paragraph. I don't know. I would say 80% maybe. I'm being fairly generous maybe, but maybe not. About 80% of the time when you'll text to an AI, you'll get a response that will make sense and, be good. But sometimes you get a response that's just totally off the wall. And as far as these voice assistants they have, those things they're dumb. They're not even, that's not even AI. That's just basically programmed to respond, to a voice command, which has been around for a long time. In the 90s. I mean, I used to have some like these mini apps, but they were like control panel things almost. Like they had a HAL 9000 that you could program. And there was like a little HAL thing on your screen that looked like HAL from 2001: A Space Odyssey. And you were able to program that to answer questions and stuff. You know, people used to create some really funky stuff then. We don't have that stuff now. Not as cool as it was. That's why I say, you know, that's my whole idea about, you know, this title card today. Remembering the way it was. It may have seemed primitive, a guy putting a paperclip in to forcibly eject a disc or something, you know. Yeah, we've made some improvements in the way these machines look and some of the functionality of them. And certainly memory has gone way up. But generally speaking, the overall experience hasn't changed. It hasn't improved for the better. We had a lot more capabilities, a lot more bang for the buck 10, 20 years ago. I don't care what anybody says. And greed ruined it. That's what happened. These companies just became so big and public that it became about shareholder return, quarter over quarter, year over year return. I mean, I talked about it yesterday. The stock market's up in like the 33,000. It was up to 34,000. I mean, these are ridiculous numbers. And it was, you know, and in the 90s, you know, it was like just hitting, you know, 3,000 and into 5,000. So, yeah, you know, you gotta be a realist today. And, you know, that's why I say you don't know what you don't know. That above my head, and I have a shirt with that on it. And everything you know is wrong, man. And definitely game over. And this whole idea of then what, which you can see on the hoodie, which is available on a shirt, and you could even get a sticker with that on it. But definitely the book. It's like, then what, man? You know? And there's so much stuff that we're going to get into, you know, because I'm going to keep doing these shows. But, you know, because I'm going to get more into Earth changes. That's why this is ROCKFLUX.com, not the morning show the way it was for 250 plus episodes previously. Though you could still see the morning show there in the background next to the old dial phone. That still works, by the way. A 60-year-old phone that still works. Think of something today, you know, it's like that would last 50 or 60 years. Appliances. When I bought my refrigerator, I hate to even say this because it's like, watch it die today on me. I bought my refrigerator 5 or 6 years ago. And the guy said, do you want to take out, you know, they have this extended insurance type of thing or whatever. I've got, nah. But he's saying, you know, these things only last. This is a salesman selling me this thing in the store, one of those box stores. Is, you know, these things only last, you know, about 5 years or so. You know? And it's like, I remember, see, this is the thing. And again, it's like remembering the way it used to be, you know, and I'm not like being some kind of like trying to, you know, give you this old fogey type of idea, you know, because like people are so afraid when someone talks about the past, like as if the past never existed. It's because of the way, you know, so much revisionism history and the way the media deals with stuff, as if the whole world began like, you know, in the year 2000 or something, right? I'm here to tell you I've moved all over. And if you want, I mean, a guy who writes 10 books, has 50 songs, right? And has done I don't know, 500 of these shows or more, right? And all kinds of jobs, and lived all over the world and all up through many states and major cities, New York, LA, DC, Philly, all that stuff. You don't do that stuff without having, seeing things and experiencing life. Well, many apartments ago, all right, I had an apartment that had a refrigerator in it from the 60s, one of those like retro white rounded things with like the pull handle on it. Okay. And this was in this was like the 90s. Okay. But that was like a 60s refrigerator. So it would have been like 30, 35 years old. All right. And I remember my parents had a refrigerator, which was a more modern refrigerator in the house, because my mom was into like, getting the one that had color coordinated with her kitchen or something like that. So she had some kind of kitchen, refrigerator in there that matched the kitchen, the counters and stuff, and the stove, I don't know. And I could remember that refrigerator being there from high school through college, well, from childhood, but I mean through college and coming back, because I've traveled around and coming home for holidays and stuff like that. And that refrigerator was there, so 20 some years, 20 plus years, who knows how many years, but definitely over 20 years or more. Maybe 25 years, maybe 30 years. I don't know. But it was like there. I think it was from this. Yeah, it was probably like 30 years. Well, anyway, one day it, died. And they got a new refrigerator. And the new refrigerator that they got, and I think they got a new stove too, an electric stove. Eventually, one of the burners, burned out or something like that. And the new refrigerator they got, I think after 5 or 6 years or something like that, went on the fritz and was no good. And that's the same. It's the same with with telephones. A lot of people don't have a home phone, but I still use a phone, to go out in the backyard. Because like I said, I don't have I got rid of my cell phone service. I use an app so I can make a Wi-Fi phone call on my iPhone. I have a fairly recent version if you look at it, because they haven't changed the designs on these things. See, that's the thing. But this one, I can't put the new operating system on that. See, that's the other thing. You got to buy a new phone if you want the new operating system. It's all about greed. But these new phones, you have to buy them every couple of years because they just, it's planned obsolescence. And so, washers, dryers, refrigerators, stoves, definitely computers, smartphones, all kinds of things, all these appliances. So greed is not good for us, for the average person. Greed is good for corporations that want, to have quarter over quarter, year over year, massive profits and rake in hundreds of billions of dollars. It's basically what they call the transfer of wealth, right? From the working person, or what used to be the middle class, which is pretty much non-existent. I mean, there's still bureaucrats. There's a lot of people who are still lucky enough to have mostly government. Sorry, my mustache is itchy. People have these government jobs, cushy jobs, or certain jobs in some of these bigger corporations that are mostly to probably have good contracts with the government, or like it, if you're a higher up in the corporate structure of Amazon's or, Walmart's or stuff. Not if you're a worker, but I mean, if you're in the corporate level, you're going to make in the six figures. Okay. Now, if you're making in the six figures, you basically, you're living well. That's the middle class. That's the way people were living in the 70s. And people in the 70s were living that way on like $20,000, dollars. $20,000 or $30,000. You were living well. Doctors were making that kind of money. $40,000. A good doctor, making 40 grand or something was living very well, right? Now it's like six figures, and like the guy who did the surgery on me, the guy makes probably $1 million, seven figures. And like I talked about guys like Bezos and stuff, billions of dollars, pisses away a couple $1 billion just to go up in this little spacecraft for 7 minutes so he could look at space and say, oh, I was in space. And it has enough money, has $2 billion to just throw away to do that, to go on a ride, right? So greed is not good for the average person. And, if you remember the way it used to be, all of these things are obsolete. So that's why I've basically have taken down, become this living at the poverty level type of thing, scale down my life. So I'm free of that. So anyway, that's today's show. It goes pretty fast. I'm a real babbler. So anyway. Good morning. I'll probably see you tomorrow. Like I say, I'm not going to guarantee that I'll be doing these every day as I was before. But I'm pretty sure I'll probably do a show tomorrow. But if not, the day after. So thanks for watching. Visit TonyCaravanLive.com or ROCKFLUX.com. And get the book, because it is essential that you get that book, In fact, the book. I'm going to put this in the closing. Oh, wait a second. How do I do that? No. Yes. Sorry about that. I wanted to add the book to this thing, and I realized that I needed to do it from here. So I'm going to do this thing. Image. The book. Okay. Unload image when not showing. Browse. Don't know. Bear with me, folks. The show is basically over. If you want to go, you can go. Anyhow, I'm just going to add then what, to this whole scheme of things. And you get to see this live, how I do this. But yeah, thanks for watching. And if you go to TonyCaravanLive.com or to ROCKFLUX.com, you will see, and scroll down, you will see a link to get Then What. And I highly recommend you get the paperback version of that book. So until then, all the best. Hopefully it's not raining or leaking where you are, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Thanks for listening.